Let us look at this 2027 presidential election, and we are juxtaposing it with the statement that came from Buba Galadima, of course, a chieftain of the New Nigerian People's Party, where he had made it very clear that they were the one that brought Buhari into politics, and that their intention was because of how the OPC was dismantling what he called the structure of Fulani in Ilorin. Remember how the issue of Afonja and Janta Alimi happened in sometime 18th century? How the Janta Alimi brought down the Yoruba warlord, talking about the Afonja in 18th century. Now, before we go further, let me even bring in what Buba Galadima said. I'm reading from Daily Post. He said, we brought Buhari into politics to stop OPC dismantling Fulani in Ilorin. Buba Galadima. You go further to say that a chieftain of the New Nigerian People's Party, NNPP, Buba Galadima, has explained how some northern group recruited late President Muhammadu Buhari into Nigerian politics. The NNPP chieftain disclosed this on Tuesday while feeding questions on Arise Television's morning show program. Galadima specifically stated that the late Buhari was brought into politics because the Oduduwa People's Congress, OPC, between 1999 and 2000 invaded the Ilorin with the sole aim of uprooting what he called Fulani structures. The NNPP chieftain said his northern group felt that was too much, adding that former President Olusegun Obasanjo and then Lagos State Governor Bola Tinubu were doing nothing. But the point here is, it is very clear why and how Buhari came into politics. But the question here is, we are looking at another election. And there are arguments as to who govern Nigeria come 2027. And the North are at it again. Understand that there's already a coalition where the likes of Atiku, Rufai, Malami, and co are already seriously positioned themselves to determine how the next face of Nigeria will be shaped. But let me quickly say this, that it is irrespective of the opinion of Northerners or the Fulanis or whoever may have nursing the same agenda through which they brought Buhari into politics. The point here is the South have 8 years to govern Nigeria before the power will shift to the North. The reason is simple. Though there is no constitutional provision that says after the South rule for 8 years, the North rule for 8 years. But that understanding happened there. That means that tacit agreement happened there. That explains the reason after Obasanjo governed for 8 years, he went to the North. And after Buhari governed for 8 years, he came to the South. So the South should be allowed to complete their 8 years. But the point here is, if the North is complaining that they are tired of Tinubu because of perhaps economic hardship and insecurity, I want to tell them that the South have another alternative in the person of Peter Obi. So if they are not comfortable working with Tinubu, of course, the South is already positioned to give them another alternative, because Peter Obi have been proven over and over as someone who have the capacity to sail the ship of Nigeria out of the present quagmire to safety. We have seen how, of course, in the past, he has been adjudged as most prudent politician when it comes to spending government resources. He has been adjudged as the most competent Nigerian politician when it comes to cutting cut of governance. That we have seen in so many ways. And again, the recent revelations that came that has to do with himself rejecting an oil block in the time of Jonathan as a president speaks volume. But apart from that, let us even look at some things that Buhari stood for as the president of Nigeria. How he tried to use his position to protect the interests of even the North, by extension the Fulanis. Under his watch, if you look at security positions, we had about 17, talking about from the Office of the National Security Advisor to the Chief of Air Staff, Chief of Defense Staff, Chief of Naval Staff, Director of DSS. Name it, we are talking about 17. And about 14 went to the North, majorly his ethnic extraction. which many people view then as a way of protecting his immediate constituency, which is the Fulani. But beyond that, let us equally look at policies he pursued vigorously. We could recall that in his time, he made attempts to introduce Ruga. Ruga is a Fulani word, but it eventually come out to mean Fulani settlement. And this, according to him, was to address incident clashes between host communities and Fulani henchmen. Though that did not go down with Nigerians, considering the story of Ilorin, the Afonja, and the Janta Alimi, and some other stories that have made history in the past, so that couldn't fly. And as such, it didn't see the light of the day. Another issue is, we understand that even that government was very vehement against anti-open grazing laws. And most places, most people already consider anti-open grazing laws as a panacea for peace. Because the modern day cattle rearing is no longer fashionable to allow your cow to roam about. What is fashionable now is ranching. But even the grazing routes and forest reserves that are already obsolete, that same administration was advocating for it. And at every point in time, they were even making it very clear that the essence, or rather the reason we see clashes between herders and host communities is because of anti-open grazing. We understand that in the past, the state of Ekiti State, yes, under Fayose, and Benue State under Samuel Otom actually made anti-open grazing law. And these laws were not effectively enforced, perhaps because the agency of government that enforces it is directly under the federal government. Talking about the police. And do not forget that even recently, the former governor of Benue State, talking about Samuel Otom, came out to say that in his time as governor, that they lobbied him to drop, or rather to repeal, that anti-grazing law. And the lobbying was that they were going to give him about 90 billion naira. One, a part of it was to enable him access salary areas of people who are in his state. And the second part of it was to give him to come about developmental projects. But all of this, according to him, he resisted. But let me quickly say that in his time as governor, we all knew that he was always a loggerhead with federal government because of the activities of herders and Fulani militias. Even at the point, there was an assassination attempt on his life, where Fulani nationality movement would come out to say yes, that they did it. They even both said that the man was lucky and that next time he would not be that lucky. Another area he pursued such policy has to do with water resources bill, which many Nigerians viewed as a way of federal government taking over all waterfronts and possibly to have the opportunity and the leverage or the power, the right to start allocating it, which was speculated that the intention was to allocate it to Fulani herders for the cattle to have access to water. That as well didn't go down with Nigerians, and as such, the policy hit brick wall, or rather the bill hit brick wall, as it could not sit through in the National Assembly. But so just as I was saying before, we all saw all the effort the then government put in to see whether they could reclaim the forest reserves and grazing routes, which have been encroached for obvious reasons. And again, I think the major panacea to solve these herders host community clashes is ranching. Ranching is the way to go, because the modern day cattle rearing is anchored on ranching. But where the government is getting it wrong is, or rather the herders or those who own cow, where they get it wrong is they expect the government to build the ranches. But when you talk about cattle rearing, it's personal and private business. Just like any other Nigerian who is doing any other business, you are meant to finance or bankroll your business. Even though some argue that ranching is capital intensive, yes, I may agree, but there are financial institutions that are valuable that can lend credit facilities to those who want to do ranching. And of course, over the years, we understand that cattle rearing, the livestock has value chain. Of course, there will be opportunity for the bank or the financial institution to recoup their money. But to say the government should fund ranching, for me, is a misnomer, because other ethnic groups in Nigeria have business that is peculiar to them, and they do it from their own resources. And when they need financial support, they know where to go to. Talking about the financial institutions which normally give out loans, credit facilities for such venture. But to say you are waiting for government is a misadventure. Because I understand that in the past, the federal government earmarked some money under the last administration for the same ranching. We understand that they wanted to do some pilot scheme, and at the end of the day, the thing did not get headway. And another major issue is, even if they want to do ranching, even if the people who want to even do ranching themselves, who rear cow themselves, are already putting money together for ranching. The question is, with the attitude and behavior of the Fulani herders and Fulani military, it becomes very difficult, extremely difficult, for people to give out land to them. Because the way it is, we understand that any land ceded to Fulani, whether in terms of ranching, whether for the purpose of ranching, it is very difficult to make sure that it did not cause problem, because in most cases, it started as perhaps a small piece of land to settle. Before you know it, it graduates into Fulani community. Before you know it, they start claiming there as their ancestral home. That brings me to the issue that happened recently in Plateau, a situation where a Fulani youth leader came out clearly to say, yes, we are, or rather we were born here, and as such, we do not have any other place to go, that this is their own ancestral home. I'm not saying they were not born there anyway, but the point is, if you came there and you met people on ground, and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria says that wherever you are born, you are a citizen, does that mean that you should be wreaking havoc, maybe killing and even trying to exterminate those you met there? Because after the issue that happened in Boko's and Bassa local government areas of Plateau State, the governor Mufan came out clearly to say that this is genocidal Fulani invasion. And since he made that accusation or other allegation, nobody had come out to say, no, it was not a Fulani invasion or rather genocidal invasion. So if the statement still stands, nobody is challenging it, nobody is speaking that it is not true, it means actually that is what it is. We equally saw a similar thing in Benue, when the president visited Benue after the wake of the massacre in Guma local government area of the state. The monarch that spoke on behalf of the people made it very clear that it has nothing to do with herders host community clashes. That this is purely genocide intent. So you begin to wonder what is happening. But what is some aspect of all this is the authorities are not prosecuting those who do this to act as a deterrent. I understand that in Benue issue, the police have said they made some arrests, but the public is still waiting to see the prosecution to act as deterrent to others. Because the essence of law, the essence of arrest and prosecution is to act as deterrent to others. Because if people commit crime and go away with it, it will embolden other people to do the same thing. But when people know that one crime is committed, arrests will be made, people will be prosecuted, definitely it will deter people from going into that same crime. So that is why the authorities must rise to the occasion to do the needful. And to do the needful is to arise and prosecute those offenders. But again, let me quickly say that Nigeria as a country, as a matter of urgency and necessity, must possess monopoly of coercive power. Because the way and manner, despite of insecurity, particularly occasioned by the excess of Fulani militias, is taking a worrisome dimension. And the thing is even coming to the southern part of the country more than before. What we hitherto here in the north is already here with us in the southern part of the country. Talking about invasion of communities. Even recently, a monarch in the southeastern part of the country, specifically in Abia State or so, raised alarm that the Fulanis acquiring massive land in his domain. So I think it's a worrisome situation that needs to be addressed, and all hands must be on deck, because I think the solution that came from the solution that came from the Director General of DSS talking about Ajari, I think is the way to go. That is empowering the communities to be the first line of defense in case of invasion, because the communities are proven over and again to be more efficient, competent in addressing this, going to the fact that they know the terrain better than any other person. Because in an environment where you are born into, in an environment where you grew, of course, you know the terrain more than whoever is coming in terms of security from other parts of the country. I understand that the command and control system currently is not yielding much results. Talking about the situation where the command comes from Abuja, it trickles down to the state, to the local government and all that. So we must get a buy-in of the locals, and we must integrate the traditional rulers, the traditional institutions into the security architecture if we must get a meaningful result. I must say very big thank you for your time. This is Sadam Midana, Mr. Matu.